Their once celebrated leader had become the very symbol of political corruption and failure. Tiffany Henyard's journey, which once represented a victory for women in politics, has now transformed into a cautionary tale of ambition, unchecked by integrity and accountability. Her rise to power was initially seen as groundbreaking, a victory for progress, especially in a town that had long been mired in stagnation. The election of Dalton's first female mayor was celebrated as a triumph for breaking gender barriers. Henyard was hailed as a leader who could bring change to a community desperate for progress. However, as her time in office continued, so did the mounting controversies, and what was supposed to be a beacon of hope quickly descended into a dark chapter in the village's history. Allegations of corruption began to surface almost immediately after Henyard took office. She appointed unqualified allies to key positions within the village government, allegedly in a bid to consolidate political power. These appointments, often made without the proper legal processes, raised alarm bells. As tensions with the board of trustees grew, Henyard's defiance toward the legal system became more evident. She ignored court orders and disregarded objections, further eroding her credibility and damaging her relationships with the very people she was supposed to work with. The accusations didn't stop at questionable appointments. Henyard was accused of embezzling state funds to fund her lavish lifestyle, all while essential services in Dalton continued to suffer. The most damaging revelation came from a former lover, who publicly accused Henyard of accepting bribes from local businesses in exchange for preferential treatment. According to the testimony, Henyard used her political position to offer expedited permits and other favors, undermining the integrity of Dalton's legal system. This testimony not only painted a picture of financial misconduct, but also revealed an even deeper level of corruption that had taken root under Henyard's leadership. Once celebrated for her groundbreaking achievement as the first female mayor of Dalton, Henyard's actions soon overshadowed her past accomplishments, leaving residents to feel deeply betrayed by the very leader they had once trusted to bring progress. Instead of fulfilling the promises of change, Henyard's tenure became a lesson in how power can corrupt. Her relentless focus on consolidating power by placing loyalists in key positions made it clear that her personal agenda took precedence over the needs of the community. Rather than addressing the growing concerns of residents or complying with legal challenges, she dug in her heels, further isolating herself from those around her. The revelations kept coming, with one damaging story after another. Witnesses spoke out, accusing Henyard of using municipal funds for personal travel and luxury purchases, including extravagant shopping sprees, all while the village struggled to keep its finances in check. The situation became increasingly dire as the financial crisis in Dalton deepened, exacerbated by Henyard's actions. The once hopeful community now faced the stark reality that the leader they had trusted was implicated in a scandal that could have far-reaching consequences. Public outrage reached a boiling point as it became evident that Henyard was not only defying the legal system, but was actively using her position for personal gain. The allegations of corruption, bribery, and financial mismanagement made it clear that the village was suffering, and that Henyard's leadership had ultimately done more harm than good. As investigations continued, with the FBI now involved, the full scale of Henyard's alleged misconduct began to come into sharper focus. The community of Dalton, which had once celebrated her rise to power, was now left grappling with the fallout of her actions. With federal charges looming, the prospect of Henyard facing legal consequences seemed increasingly likely. The people of Dalton were left to pick up the pieces. The damage caused by Henyard's leadership was deep and widespread, and the village now faced the difficult task of rebuilding its trust in local government. It was unclear how long it would take to restore the faith of the community, if it could be restored at all. Henyard's story, which began as a historic breakthrough for women in politics, had spiraled into a tragic reminder of how easily ambition can be corrupted. What could have been a legacy of positive change had instead become a cautionary tale of unchecked power, egos, and the erosion of public trust. The village of Dalton now faced an uncertain future, with political instability and deep distrust casting a long shadow over its once promising future. As the investigation continues, the full extent of Henyard's alleged misconduct is still unfolding. However, it's clear that the damage she has done to Dalton's political system is severe and will take years, if not decades, to repair. Whether Henyard's career will come to an end through legal action or political defeat remains to be seen. But one thing is certain. Her once promising leadership has now been overshadowed by scandal, and the community she once led must now work to rebuild from the ashes of her failed administration. Henyard's rise and fall serve as a stark reminder of the dangers of power, ambition, and corruption in politics. The village of Dalton must now contend with the painful reality that the leader they once looked to for change had become the very symbol of the political dysfunction they had hoped to leave behind. Tiffany Henyard's political career, once hailed as a groundbreaking achievement for women in politics, has now become the central figure of a devastating scandal that has left Dalton reeling. What was initially seen as a moment of progress for a town in need of change has turned into a cautionary tale of unchecked ambition, corruption, and a deep betrayal of the very people Henyard was elected to serve. Her rise to power symbolized hope, especially for women in politics, and sparked optimism in the village of Dalton. But as the months went by, Henyard's leadership quickly unraveled, exposing a dark side to her administration that many had not expected. Accusations of financial mismanagement, abuse of power, and corruption started to surface, and what had once been a promising political career became marred by scandal. At the heart of the controversy was Henyard's lavish use of municipal funds to finance her personal lifestyle. While Dalton struggled to meet basic needs, Henyard was accused of funding extravagant trips, making unnecessary luxury purchases, and indulging in the kind of opulence that seemed disconnected from the reality facing the community. Residents, who once saw Henyard as a symbol of change, were now grappling with the painful reality that their mayor had used public money to enrich herself. But the financial misconduct was just the tip of the iceberg. Henyard's political tactics became increasingly controversial as she appointed unqualified allies to key village positions, including the village attorney and police chief, without following legal procedures. These controversial appointments raised suspicions that Henyard was using her position to consolidate power, surrounding herself with loyalists who were either incapable or uninterested in serving the public's best interests. Her defiance of court orders and failure to comply with legal requirements only fueled perceptions that she was willing to break the law to maintain control. As the investigation into Henyard's actions deepened, it became clear that her political future was rapidly deteriorating. Once strong relationships with key allies began to crumble, and her credibility plummeted. Henyard attempted to defend herself by framing the allegations as part of a politically motivated smear campaign, but her increasingly erratic behavior and lack of transparency did little to quell the growing public outrage. The tipping point came when a key witness, someone with intimate knowledge of Henyard's personal life, came forward with explosive testimony about her misuse of power. The witness accused Henyard of using her position to enrich herself and her allies, painting a disturbing picture of a leader more concerned with her own interests than the welfare of Dalton's residents. This testimony deepened the public's distrust, and Henyard's once unshakable hold on power began to slip away. The backlash was swift and fierce. A once loyal base of support began to erode as residents took to social media to voice their frustration. Henyard's emotional outbursts in public meetings, including one particularly tense village board meeting where her speech was met with audible disapproval, only reinforced the perception that she was losing control of both the situation and her leadership. As her behavior grew more erratic, her refusal to address the growing concerns of the community alienated even her remaining supporters. Despite all the mounting evidence against her, Henyard continued to deny any wrongdoing. Her refusal to engage in meaningful dialogue with the public only deepened the divide between her and the people she was meant to serve. In a final, desperate attempt to rally her supporters, Henyard posted a cryptic message on social media invoking religious rhetoric. "If God is for us, who can be against us?" However, this message backfired, further alienating the already disillusioned community. Meanwhile, federal authorities, who had been quietly investigating Henyard for months, began to intensify their efforts. It was revealed that the investigation focused on dubious financial transactions and potential corruption within Henyard's administration. Individuals close to Henyard, including her boyfriend, had already been questioned, and new revelations only added to the growing sense of betrayal among Dalton's residents. As the federal investigation progressed, it became increasingly likely that Henyard would face serious legal consequences. As her political career neared its end, Dalton was left to pick up the pieces of a broken system. The town that had once been filled with hope for change now found itself mired in scandal and dysfunction. The damage caused by Henyard's leadership was deep, and the road to recovery seemed long and uncertain. With federal charges looming, Henyard's leadership had become a symbol of corruption and betrayal, a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked power. For the residents of Dalton, the question now was whether their political system could ever recover. Could trust in local government be restored? Could the village rebuild after the devastating impact of Henyard's leadership? The damage to the community's political infrastructure was significant, and many feared that it would take years, if not decades, to repair the wounds left by her actions. Henyard's story serves as a stark reminder of the consequences of corruption, ambition, and betrayal. Her rise to power, once seen as a victory for women in politics, has now been overshadowed by scandal, and her fall from grace will likely serve as a lasting cautionary tale. The future of Dalton remains uncertain, and the question of whether the town can ever recover from the damage caused by Henyard's leadership hangs in the balance. The unfolding investigation, combined with the deep divide within the community, will shape the future of Dalton for years to come.